Hi, my name is No Moon and I love reading thriller books, and if you love thrillers, you probably heard of the name Riley Sager before. He is an author who came out with great works of thrillers over the years, and I have read all of them, and here is how I would rank them all. At the top of the list, I am putting Home Before Dark. This was the first thriller book that I have ever read by Riley Sager, and I think this is what started my obsession, or just what led to me reading the rest of the books. And I have been searching for another book like Home Before Dark since I read it. I think it's one of the books and thrillers that I gave 5 out of 5, which doesn't happen often. So I have a lot of love for Home Before Dark. I have a copy of the book as well. I just try, every time someone asks me and if they like thrillers, I give them a copy of my book just so they can read it. So yeah. Home Before Dark is about God, I am doing terrible today. Home Before Dark is about Maggie, and she, after her dad passes away, she inherits a house that she used to live in with her family when she was much younger. And all she really remembers about this house is that they lived there, like when she moved in with her parents, there were a little weird things happening around the house, and they abruptly left, and her dad wrote a book about the house, and he was kind of making it I guess it's kind of like he wrote about like how there's supernatural, that this house is not a normal house, and there was how weird things happening, and then this was like, it had like ghosts, and people don't know if what happened is true, and she's even very confused as well because she doesn't remember witnessing anything, but she does remember her parents being like pretty scared of the house and just them leaving abruptly. So when she inherits the house, she decides to go back and flip the house because that's what she does, and that's when she experiences weird things around the house again, and she kind of remembers or some of the things that were happening, and she's just trying to piece together what really happened. And it's a great book. When I was reading this, I was scared. I had dreams about it. I think I finished in a day because that's just how good this was. And so if you were ever interested in Riley Sager and you heard of him and you're not sure which book to read, I would definitely read Home Before Dark. Although for me, this book kind of ruined the rest of his books like slightly to me, because I just feel like I just can't like another book as much as I love this one. So yeah. The second book that the second book that I would put, or in second place, I would put The House Across the Lake. This one I read very recently, but I really liked it. It's about Casey. It's about an actress named Casey, and her husband recently passed away. And this is another thing that's kind of a theme in his works. Someone always like recently passed away. Or I feel like there's a couple in it to be kind of like a theme. But yeah, like in a couple of his book, someone recently passed away, and it's not a surprise here. Cassie's husband recently passed away, and she has been drinking a lot of alcohol to deal with it, and like she's been like photographed by the paparazzi, and her mom decides to send her to their lake house in Vermont just so she can kind of like lay low during the situation, and just like I don't know, I guess try to like save her reputation in her career, but mostly to keep her out of the spotlight. And you know, she is a little bit lonely, but she's kind of like, she wants that right now, and she spends her day mostly just kind of drinking and not really doing anything else. And one day she meets her, she saves her new neighbor, Catherine, from drowning in a lake, and she kind of quickly becomes quick friends with her, and she starts this kind of like new hobby of her watching Catherine and her husband across the lake, which is not cool, but I mean, she's going through some things, and I think she just like needs something that will take her brain off of what she's feeling inside. And Catherine disappears one night, and she's beginning to think maybe her husband has something like to do with her disappearance. She doesn't think she just went back home to New York like her husband is telling her. She thinks maybe there's a little bit of something more sinister behind, and she starts to investigate, and that's when all of the crazy things start happening, which I really loved. I think for me, and what I'm noticing in his works, I generally like it when he has a little bit of a supernatural element into it. Just because I think for me, I don't read a lot of thrillers with like maybe this isn't just like someone else doing the murdering, or like someone like another human doing it. I think for me, it's a little bit more interesting when I think like, whoa, what's going on here? It was like, can this actually be a ghost, or like what's happening? I think that's what I prefer in his books, so that's why I like this book as well. And it truly is like a roller coaster of emotions. Like there's just like so many, like there's like, okay, we solved this and we figured this out, and then it's like, aha, there's another like thing that you did not know. So I don't think there is anyone who starts reading this book and it's like, okay, I knew, and finishes it and then can say like, I knew everything. Like I knew all of the plots. So it's very interesting. You never know you don't know what you're getting, and it's a wild ride, and I enjoyed it. And in third place, I'm gonna put The Last Time I Lied. This was the second book that I have read, and I read it literally right after Home After Dark, and I think that might have been one of my problems, because then I started kind of noticing like, oh, okay, like he writes very similar. I really started noticing the patterns in his writing, and I did enjoy it, but I think, you know, sometimes reading books, it's about when you read it, and it's just as important. And just because I love Home After Dark so much, maybe if I read it and gave it some time between those two, maybe this would have been rated a little bit higher for me. The Last Time I Lied is about Emma, and she attended this summer camp when she was younger, and she was put in a room with 3 other girls in a cabin, and one day 3 of her roommates disappeared, and until today nobody knows what happened to them. It's been kind of a mystery, and because of that the camp shut down, and now she's a successful artist, and she gets a call from the founder of the cabin asking if she wants to come back because they're gonna reopen the cabin, and if she wants to be like a teacher and like teach kids or show kids the art, or like a kind of like an art counselor. And she goes back there and she's put in the same cabin as last time, and I think then we kind of like start to learn about what really happened with her. And yeah, it's overall, I think this book, like I said, maybe if I read it in a different time it would be different, but I thought this book was a little bit slower paced, and it's pretty good. I think I really did like it. I thought the plot was good. I just did not like the very last ending, because then it's kind of like, to me, it's just like it did not seem believable. And yeah, overall I liked the book, but I did think it was a little bit slow paced in the beginning, and I did not like the very last, like one last like shocking like plot twist, or the ending, I guess. And I did see that people, after I read it, I looked up because I was like, is anyone with me, or am I the only one who hated it? And when I read the reviews, people seem to have liked that like that happened, but you know, to each their own. But I personally didn't like it. That's why it's a little bit lower on the list. And I think from here on out, I kind of like a theme among these books is that I just, sometimes the main characters are just like making the most dumbest like decisions, and I'm just like, why? It gets a little bit more frustrating, and I think that's like a thing. It's like, the more I like the book, the less the characters and the decisions frustrate me. And just like, it's the more I dislike the book, it's probably because the characters just frustrate the crap out of me. In fourth place, it would be Final Girls. Quincy is a final girl, and she is a final girl because she is the only survivor of a massacre that left her friends dead in the woods. And in this book, in their world, there is only like 3 known final girls, and she has corresponded with some of them. She's not as close with the other one, and the book picks up its plot when one of the final girl dies, the one that she's kind of like closer to, the one who kind of helped her to navigate what it means to be a final girl. And the other one, she is kind of just wants to be away from like the media, so no one really knows what happened to her. So the book picks up the plot when one of them dies and one of them enters her life under the premise of like, oh, hey, like, why don't we just get together or like show up to talk about what happened and see if everyone is okay. Yeah, and then also the plot picks up from there. I don't know, it is like very in the middle of the pack out of his books for me, because I think I actually do like the plot, and I like the idea of, you know, the final girls, and like that. When I read the plot of this book, I just thought it was going to be so much more interesting than the book that I read. I think it had like lots of potential to be like an amazing like book. It did fall a little bit short for me. I think like Quincy, she was like an okay main character. I wasn't like, she also had her little bit of issues, but she's not as a character, she's not as like frustrating as the girls in the books that are rated below. But she also doesn't come across as like someone that I'm deeply rooting for, that I'm like, I didn't feel super invested in her character. I guess it was at a point where when I was reading, it's just like, okay, I don't know. It was, yeah, I just like, I guess I didn't like her character that much. It's not that I disliked it, but I didn't love her, or I wasn't rooting for her. And I do think I think it just the book could have been like so much more. Yeah, that's how I would place it. And in 5th place, it's Lock Every Door, and it's a book about Jules, and she is kind of down her luck. She is currently out of her job. She found out her boyfriend was cheating on her, and she moved out, and she's been kind of staying at her best friend's place, but she needs money now, and she needs a place to stay. So she comes across this ad that's looking for house sitters in this like very infamous building, and there are a lot of, it's like there has been a lot of things, shady things, or like there's just been a lot that has happened to the people who lived in this building over the years, but no one, it's like very kept under the wraps. Like no one really knows what's going on here, and even the residents are very like I guess low-key. They don't want to like, no, they're like just very secretive, so not much has been known about it, and it just seems like an opportunity that's too good to be true, because she's getting paid so much money for this place, and as longer she stays there, the more weird things keep happening. And yeah, and the plot will go from there. And it's I think this is where it's like, it's really frustrating. I mean, all of his books, I think I have rated them all like somewhat like 3 or higher, or like very close to it, and they're generally good books. So this isn't like, even if I'm right now ranking them, I still really like them because they are interesting to read. It's just that sometimes the main characters he writes, it's like, why would you do that? Like, there has been so many opportunities, or like so many people, like crazy things that are happening around here, and like many people are like, you know, you should probably leave, and then she just doesn't. And while I think that's one of the part that's kind of frustrating, is because like he does explain why they're being this frustrating human beings, but at the end of the day, it's still like, it's still kind of frustrating to read about why they're being not that smart. So yeah, I mean, and then the plot was overall another good plot. I think just my enjoyment of the book was just overshadowed by how much I wanted to scream at her to do the smart thing. So that's why it's rated a little bit lower. And the same thing with Survive the Night, which is, I'm gonna put it in 6th place. Charlie, after her best friend recently dies, or murdered. So her best friend has been murdered, and they kind of had this fight before she died, and she is filled with lots of like guilt, and it's been really rough on her, and she wants to leave college earlier than normal than other people, like just because she's not even sure if she's gonna come back, and it's kind of hard for her to live in the same room as her best friend, or like same place where she used to stay with her best friend, because it's just kind of like reminiscing and thinking about what happens. And I think an important thing to mention in this book is like Charlie has like movies in her mind. I think he never really like went into it, but she has some mental health issue, or I don't know, but she constantly has like kind of like steps out of reality and then starts having movies in her mind where she just imagines different things. And the plot picks up when she is trying to leave a little bit early, and she's looking for a ride, and there's not a lot of people trying to leave at the same time that she is, just because she is leaving a little bit earlier, and the stranger offers to give a ride to her, and throughout the whole ride she's starting to suspect that he is not who he is telling he is. And then throughout the book she's just kind of like unsure if, because of her anxiety about the situation, she is kind of like imagining him to be this bad guy, or if he is actually this bad guy, because she's just like, she can't trust herself. Yeah, and the same thing with this book. I found her to be a little frustrating, but in this book, I guess why she's a little bit more frustrating is like explained more thoroughly, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's frustrating as her as a character. And the book plot itself, it's interesting, but it's not like it's nothing that I would go crazy for. It wasn't like as exciting as the other books. Yeah, and then like I didn't care that much for the plot. The main character was frustrating, and then also like the weird, like how I guess they dealt with the mental health in the book was a little odd to me as well. There's a moment later on, she's like, I think this will be the last movie in my mind, and I'm like, I don't know if that's how it works. Like I don't know if you have like an issue and then like you're just like, okay, now it's all gone, and then like and then it's gone. Like I don't know if that works like that. So that's why it's a little bit rated a little bit lower. But I think if you're just starting to read him and like you don't read a lot of thrillers, it's still an exciting book, but it's just, for me, just because I think I read so many books and I read already his like greater works, it was just like very meh to me. So yeah. And the last place, the worst book that I have read by him is The Only One Left, and this book is about Kit. Kit is a caregiver, and we find out her last client, their death was kind of under suspicious, or like she was under like investigation for why her last patient had died, and the place that she works for kind of stopped giving her work until this client, and this client is named Lenora, and she's kind of famous or infamous for around town because everyone thinks that she murdered her family when she was younger, so no one really wanted to care for her. So I guess her only option left in her career right now is to go care for her. And as much as she doesn't want to, she's kind of spooked out, but she just doesn't have a lot of options left, and she starts to care for Lenora, and Lenora one day offers to tell her story to her with a typewriter. Lenora hasn't really spoke to anyone since the murder of her family happened, so this is very huge for anyone, and Kit is just working with her to get the stories out, and lots of crazy stuff starts happening. And yeah, and I think this book for me was just a little bit too much. It really was just plot twist after plot twist after plot twist that it just became to a point where it was a little too much, where it's just okay, I get the element of surprise and the shock factor, but I think you just get so turned off by it after a while. And the whole thing with Lenora, if you read the whole book, it's just really I just don't find her motivation or her motive for any of this to be believable. That I don't think anyone would wait all their lives to do this. It was just not believable at all. It was just what am I reading? So yeah, if there's any book that I wish I didn't spend my time reading, I guess it would be that one, and that's why it's rated last. But yeah, overall, I will say that I still think he's a great writer. I have nenever been able to figure out what is the plot. That was worded so badly. I have never been able to figure out the plot. I feel I really do appreciate that you really just have to keep reading in order to figure out what happened, and he is very talented in that. I do think that he writes some of his female characters very dumb. But you know, I will say for some of them he gives them a reason why they're being so annoying. But yeah, I definitely think he's an author that anyone should check out. So yeah, if you're watching this video because you want to know, or you read his works, or you're trying to figure out what to read next, I hope this helped. But anyways, thank you for watching. Bye!